beacon of left-wing ideas, man. Oh! I'm so mad. I'm so mad. Andrew Yang was never a leftist, okay? From the jump. I don't give a what YouTube personality told you, what YouTube essayist, debater, commentator that told you that Andrew Yang was a fucking left-wing guy. He never was a left-wing guy. UBI is not a leftist concept. If UBI was a leftist concept, then Milton fucking Friedman would be considered a leftist. Let's watch friend of the show, The Rise of Joe Rogan by Johnny Harris.
That's right. Anything we need to know, as soon as I find out, you'll know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Sorry. Okay, here we go. I've wondered for a very long time how Joe Rogan, this guy who describes himself as a
Professional fool,
went from hosting a game show where he eats cockroaches with contestants to becoming the host of perhaps the most popular podcast on earth.
And you going, no! And that's how you die.
Now listen, I am not a Joe Rogan listener. Well, at least I wasn't before this story. But by now, I am. Because by now, me and my team have listened to a lot of Joe Rogan.
If you didn't know whether or not people agree with you or disagree with you, I think that'd probably be better overall.
I'm sorry. Is Johnny definitely not affiliated with the CIA, the World Economic Forum, or NATO Harris doing a pro Joe Rogan video? I'm going to lose my fucking mind. How many videos did this guy talk about misinformation? There's no way he's doing a pro Joe Rogan video. He's made like, first of all, he's a Vox guy, a former Vox.com guy. That's number one. Number two, he's spent an insane amount of time. Refresh. He changed the title. Wait, what? Really?
Well, hey, that's right.
Bro, he refreshed the title today. Earlier today, I said I was going to watch this. And he refreshed the title. Wait, what the fuck's going on? Okay, is he in here? Johnny, are you in here? Be honest. Bro, what the fuck? Johnny Harris is in my walls, dude. Johnny, get out of my walls.
Because by now, me and my team have listened to a lot of Joe Rogan.
If you didn't know whether or not people agree with you or disagree with you, I think that'd probably be better overall for people.
I wanted to understand where this guy came from, what his deal is. What does he say during these like 2 to 3 hour long episodes that are listened to by millions of people? Because for better or worse, he is influencing a lot of people. So let me show you how an average Joe like Rogan can sit around getting high, talking to his friends, and somehow get millions of people to tune in.
Now, I know that talking about Joe Rogan can cause some controversy.
But at the end of that round, he was deep shit.
It's weird.
Before we get into it,
him.
let's thank today's sponsor. The internet is becoming kind of a dangerous place. Like people on the internet who want to do bad things and steal from.
Wait, he's not. Wait, my man. I'm so confused. This video has been up already for 6 days too, untouched. Yeah, on the 6th day, when I finally get to it, he changed the title. Bro, Johnny Harris is such a fucking lib. Like, he's such a lib. What is going on? Like, as the premier liberal, like, he's supposed to fucking hate Joe Rogan, right? Like, there's no way he's gonna turn around and be like, this guy who is a misinformation agent is actually fucking awesome. This guy who has done so much to almost single-handedly develop the far right's prominence online is actually sick because a lot of people watch him, and here's why.
It also gets you in on an extra extended subscription to NordVPN. You get the 2-year plan plus 4
I'm
extra
showing you
months.
the ad.
Links in the description. Thank you, NordVPN, for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to Joe Rogan. Okay, so it's 1987, and here's a 20-year-old Joe Rogan taking a guy down with a spinning back kick at a Taekwondo competition.
Always moving to new schools, always dealing with new kids, and I wasn't big, and I didn't know how to fight, and I got picked on, and I didn't like it. So I said, I want to figure out how to fight.
And eventually, he got really good at it.
I was competing from the time I was 15. I just threw myself into it. It's all I did every day.
And then one summer night in 1988, when he was 21, he went to an open mic night at a comedy club in Boston.
Your legs are sprawled out on the bed like Bambi trying to walk in a frozen lake and banging your head against the headboard. I love it when we make love.
His friends goaded him to get up on stage and perform a stand-up set. It must have gone really well because soon after, Rogan moves to LA to make it big in comedy. By the 90s, he was showing up in TV shows as the goofy, lovable comedic relief.
Because the light's better over here. Damn, everything's better over here.
But this sitcom-y thing wasn't his dream. He loved comedy and fighting.
He sounds so much like my buddies from college. Like it's insane. I know like 11 dudes that speak exactly and sound exactly like that with that same exact fucking accent.
Enter UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship. Okay, so it's the late 90s, and now Joe Rogan is like a UFC commentator personality, interviewing fighters backstage. This is actual footage of his first appearance.
They are anticipating a wipeout in the finals.
And I mean, this guy's good. Like, he's got such a magnetic personality, even back then. By the time he was in his 30s, it was the 2000s, and Joe had proven to be a talented host and entertainer. And he was chosen to host a show.
Dude, Chatter said, aren't you old enough to go to college with Joe Rogan? Yeah, dog, I'm 48 years old. Yeah, you got me.
Where contestants would be pushed to their limits to test their fear. It was a show aptly named Fear Factor. Fear Factor. I mean, I remember this from my childhood. The show had like a huge impact on our media culture.
Hold on.
I think it kind of laid the foundation for sensational reality TV. It was disgusting and sometimes just downright horrifying. But honestly, it was brilliant because it was impossible to look away.
Sherry, relax. Relax, Sherry. Sherry, relax.
So Fear Factor was like the big leveling up for Joe Rogan.
You know what? Again, very fortunate. It was a great gig, plenty of money, and it was all good. And it definitely helped my stand-up because it gave me.
Dude, fucking, a lot of this is old Joe. I remember him talking about this shit where he would talk about how luck played such a big role in every aspect of his life that he was so appreciative and he was so fortunate and that he understood what it was like and how hard it was for someone to make it out the mud, for someone to come from a background like his. It's funny because, like, maybe new HasanAbi heads don't know this, but, like, I used to be a big-ass fan of Joe Rogan. I used to talk about how I was a big-ass fan of Joe Rogan way back in the day. Obviously, not when I was on Twitch. By that point, he had already completely become, like, a right-wing media monster. But I have a photo with him. I've hung out with him. He probably doesn't remember. He used to be a fan of the Young Turks and Anna Kasparian. Personally, Anna and I went to watch him do stand-up at the Improv. We hung out for 3 hours after. This was like many, many years ago. And I thought it was so sick, like, that I was talking to this guy whose podcast I was listening to, who I actually was very fond of, not necessarily because of his podcast, but because I always thought, like, this guy was, like, he was free. Like, he had made so much money off of Hollywood shit, but he was entering a totally new realm in online content creation, which I was a part of as well at that point, right? As a young person who wanted to become a content creator, I would look at him as like the idol. You know what I mean? I would look at him as like the right thing to do. Get the money, sure, but then take that and create your own thing where you have pure editorial freedom. Young Cap Bro was like 29 at this point. No, when I'm talking about with Joe Rogan, I was like 24. He was the blueprint, exactly. And it's really interesting to think of because I saw this guy who was doing podcasting, which was like not as popular back then. It was not as like broadly welcomed, received. The reception was nowhere near the same. I thought, wow, here's a guy who, had every opportunity to continue on Hollywood, and yet turned around and made his own thing online, had editorial freedom, and was still making money, but also he had influence that he had translated on to a product that was entirely his own. And I thought that was incredible. I wanted to do exactly that. Not like a podcast or whatever, but I wanted to do something where I had that level of financial and editorial freedom, which is ironic because I think I have achieved that. But somewhere along the way, Joe Rogan, during the Gamergate era, started building up right-wing content creators that he was fascinated by. Okay? Joe Rogan was the first place that gave a tremendous amount of prominence to Milo Yiannopoulos, for example. I remember telling people at the Young Turks, Jenk included, to look out for this Milo guy, that he was going to be a big fucking name and was already becoming a big name in the far-right circles. He was one of the first people that had Milo Yiannopoulos on a major influence, or a major outlet, basically, at the time. And then now we look back at Milo Yiannopoulos and we're like, yeah, what a joke, what a clown. But like, you don't remember. If you were there at the time, he was like impossible to avoid. Everyone fucking talked about Milo Yiannopoulos. And he was a gigantic piece of shit back then, and not really much has changed. It's just that he got canceled by the right, ironically, due to, I think, something that he said on the Joe Rogan podcast, as a matter of fact. So, he was insanely popular in the 2015 era. He was like the bad boy, you know what I mean? And you know, you could be gay and pro-Trump and like you dress up in these crazy ways and all this shit. Sargon of Akkad was on Joe Rogan. Jordan Peterson was gaining a lot of prominence. Bill Maher also put up Milo Yiannopoulos. Bill Maher also did that. But Joe Rogan had like Stefan Molyneux on, and out and about white supremacists. I think he might have actually deleted that episode, if I'm not mistaken. Because like, he is just straight up a, you know, openly agitating, you know, anti-Semitic, white nationalist piece of shit. Now, Matt Walsh's had on recently. I'm saying like, this is in the beginning, where he was like, oh, I'm just a centrist. I'm just a centrist. He still pulls that shit, but it doesn't matter. Now we know, like he said, he would vote for Ron DeSantis and shit like that. So, I'm talking like back in 2015, 2014 even, when he started basically being the beginning of the alt-right pipeline. Like, he was, as a singular force, the person with the most mainstream appeal, with the most popular fucking podcast, constantly pumping these like weird far-right figures that were sometimes marginal and irrelevant, that became relevant afterwards, or were, you know, relatively relevant, and he just had them on and offered them their platform. Yeah, at his peak, Milo was comparable to Tate if you ignore the arrest spike. Yeah. And he was rich back then, so don't say now that he's rich he does not want to pay taxes. He was very fucking rich back then. You know, I loved it. He would constantly talk about buddies of his even back then. There were certain issues. Atheist YouTube was huge in the alt-right pipeline. Absolutely. This was the other part. There was a big break-off point that permanently solidified a lot of the atheist YouTubers that actually went in one direction, which was leftism, and atheist YouTubers that went into the full-blown reactionary anti-Obama train. Atheist YouTube pre-Obama was, you know, in its inception of YouTube, basically, when it first started. YouTube used to be a place where a lot of people would shit on. YouTube used to be a place where a lot of people would shit on like former George W. Bush goofs and gaffes, right? 2007, I think, is when it first started. Like, the OG YouTubers that were atheists were very much like, fuck the anti-science stuff that the Republican right is pushing for. Fuck the anti-stem cell research from the Bush administration. This was after the Bush administration, but still, like, they were Like those atheists back then, and I know all this because like I'm literally related to Jank, and like I'm familiar with like Air America and all of these like super old school liberal outlets and the liberal content creation space, independent content creation space. So there was a lot of that. And then atheists under the Obama administration turned around and were like, well, we're anti-everything. We're anti-religion, and we're certainly anti-Islam. But Islam seems to be a way more ever-present danger to America and the rest of the world, actually. So we're only going to talk about Islam. And they slowly but surely, through the likes of Sam Harris and others, became like gigantic Islamophobes who then would always defend their Islamophobic perspectives under the guise of rationality. Like, this is rational, this is logic, this is reason. You should be afraid of Muslims. What little did they know was that a lot of those fucking guys were basically just churning out State Department propaganda. They didn't realize it at the time, and they probably still don't realize it. Many of them actually turned around and maybe offered a little bit of restitution for that. They de-radicalized a little bit. But a lot of them at the time were straight up trying to criticize Obama from, quote unquote, the left, the atheist left, by saying Obama is a Muslim apologist. Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, a lot of these people either got second career revitalizations or rose to prominence at that time. Okay? One big turning point in like the online leftist spaces, like a lot of these supposedly progressive atheists became totally fucking right-wing and out of control, was the Sam Harris Cenk Uygur debate. It was a 3-hour debate. It was one of the first ever like 3-hour fucking debates on a political subject matter that got that level of popularity. If people remember that, I don't know. If you might be too fucking old. If you remember that, you probably are or were a piece of shit. Let's be real. And you are not anymore, so that's great. Thank you for coming back to like sanity. But that debate for the online circles was basically the cutoff point. After that, a lot of these like atheist guys who were like fuck Islam, a lot of these Islamophobic atheist guys, the r/Reddit atheist Andes, r/atheism Andes, they became increasingly more reactionary, especially alongside Gamergate, misogynistic. Some of them adopted racist values as well. Okay? Transphobia and the like. Now, since then, even those, including Sam Harris, for example, have kind of shifted their perspective in the Trump era. A lot of those guys were like, okay, maybe we were like a little too crazy about certain things. I don't think Sam Harris has ever apologized for hating Muslims and being a psychopath, being an Islamophobic piece of shit. Sam Harris is not anti-Muslim, nor was Hitchens. Yeah, you're right, brother. He was operating on a different playing field that our ape-like Muslim brains cannot comprehend, myself included. Yeah, thank you. Some of those guys didn't make that turn back to liberalism. It's because they found it easier to sell out to the anti-Islam people, less resistance to that in the U.S., and you can get dumbass racists on board to help spread it. I was a fan of Sam Harris like in 2004, and then started to dislike him when he went only anti-Islam. Yeah. Didn't Sam Harris recently deny that George Floyd was murdered? No, I don't think he did that. Sam Harris has been like very much a unbearable fucking lib again for like the past 4 years, I think. He has distanced himself from the rest of the intellectual dark web, which was comprised of figures such as Joseph Robinette Rogan, Samuel Jebediah Harris, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, the Weinstein brothers, who are fucking irrelevant anti-vaxxer freaks now. These were all the guys that were that comprised the intellectual dark web. A famous article written by Barry Weiss, formerly of the New York Times. Dave Rubin was a part of the intellectual dark web as well. Yes. You might have noticed that none of these motherfuckers are intellectuals. But yeah, the Trump plus anti-vax shit made Sam Harris full-blown snap back to liberalism. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of like history, online history, from a person who experienced it and got death threats and mass harassment campaigns from every different aspect of every dark corner of the interweb. So, you know, I've gotten it. I've gotten it from all ends. The atheists, the that say, you know, I'm too much of a Muslim defender, to the white supremacists who say I allow too much for black people. Like I let black people get away with too much crime. So I've gotten through all of that. And I was far more alone back then. I do not feel as alone now. I have a wonderful community, a massive, sizable community. But back then, it certainly felt much, much lonelier. Let's continue.
You money too. It gave me the ability to not worry about like having money in the bank.
And by the end of the early 2000s, Joe had a lot of experience. He was an entertainer, he was a comedian, he was a host, he was an actor. He had built a hefty network of interesting people. He was charismatic and tough and funny and hardworking. All of the ingredients he needed for his next move, podcasting. On Christmas Eve 2009, Joe and one of his comedian friends recorded a 2-hour podcast. It was a sprawling conversation covering everything from conspiracy theories to game addiction to sensory deprivation. It was honestly a good omen for what this show would become. He called his podcast the Joe Rogan Experience, kind of a nod to Jimi Hendrix. Now remember, in 2009, podcasts weren't really a thing yet. You had a bunch of like sort of radio shows that were making it onto podcasts like This American Life or Planet Money, Stuff You Should Know. But this was all very new at the time. But that changed when people could stream podcasts on demand with their new little internet-connected pocket computers. Right from the beginning, Joe Rogan's show was fast, prolific, and consistent, uploading multiple times a week. And by the end of his second year on the show, he had a bunch of big names as guests.
We've done everything wrong. These were young male elephants. They're the fastest moving creatures, I think, in the wild once they get going. And
podcasts abso-fucking-lutely were not a thing in 2009. If you're saying podcasts are a thing in 2009, all you're doing is admitting to everyone in the chat that you are probably the oldest fucking nerd in the room. Even I at least have the decency to lie and say podcast became a thing much, much later, and it certainly wasn't a thing in like 2013. I started listening to podcasts in around 2012, 2013. That's when I started listening to it, and it certainly, even back then, was not a thing in the public consciousness. Like, people didn't listen to podcasts with the same fucking frequency as they do now, you unbearable nerds. Yeah, WTF with Mark Maron. Old HasanAbi heads know. My original intro wasn't welcome to the HasanAbi broadcast. It was, what the fuck, buddies, what the fucking... I would make fun of Mark Maron. That was my like super old intro on my stream.
they hate bright shirts, which of course we were wearing. They're spooked by people holding implements, which of course that's what we were doing, and they particularly don't like being herded by people 1,000th their weight.
At the beginning, they were mostly comedians and fighters.
I'm thinking about Tom Cruise and Scientology. There's a man using every ounce of what Scientology is offering to make himself the best available man that he's capable of being.
Yeah.
Then you've got Travolta.
But soon he started to branch outside of comedians and fighters to a different genre of people. Let's call them thinkers.
Workers don't have the right to engage in collective bargaining in the United States until the 1930s.
That's where that whole idea of let the market decide falls apart.
He would have philosophers on, and politicians, scientists, you name it. The show started to become just a grab bag of any interesting person Joe Rogan wanted to have a conversation with. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
If you don't fucking talk about, like, in the thinkers era, if you don't talk about fucking Milo and the prominent, like, right-wing figures that he not only lend a voice to, but, like, basically mainstreamed, I'm gonna fucking lose my mind. Are you insane? What kind of fucking research are you doing, Johnny? God damn it. There's no way. He has to. He has to talk about it. I believe Johnny Harris is going to do a better job than this.
The astrophysicist appeared a few times.
You get a multiverse. We didn't pull that out of our ass. That came out of the equations.
Soon, it was bigger and bigger names. Elon Musk, Russell Brand, Nick Kroll, Jay Leno, Jordan Peterson.
Okay, we passed through that era. We passed through the fucking thinker era without Milo mentioned.
Wiz Khalifa, Dr. Phil, Travis Barker. By the late 2010s, the Joe Rogan Experience was reaching around 11 million listeners per episode, making it the most popular podcast ever, at least on platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Like, I had never listened to this, but I knew of Joe Rogan because
I did. That's crazy. I did. Religiously, as a matter of fact. Holy fuck. Milo ain't mainstream, though. Nobody will care. What are you talking about? Milo was mainstream. Joe Rogan made him mainstream. Milo Yiannopoulos and all of the other fucking people that I mentioned were incredibly relevant in the online sphere. You guys literally forget. Milo Yiannopoulos wasn't just some fucking random, like, gay guy who went on college campuses and, like, caused riots or whatever. He also wrote for Breitbart. And when he was writing for Breitbart, he very clearly and deliberately factored in Nazi propaganda that he openly admitted to writing in Breitbart, a publication that blew up, was already like a relatively successful publication, but like certainly blew up after during the Trump campaign. Breitbart, where Ben Shapiro also wrote at a time when they had a tab called Black Crime. Breitbart, the publication that was owned by Andrew Breitbart, rest in piss, who died on a fucking toilet off of a cocaine overdose. That Breitbart, the publication, okay, politics is downstream from culture, suck my cock. That Breitbart had a black crime tab. Like, you would go on the website and click black crime, and it would show up all of the black crimes that were occurring. Ben Shapiro used to write for Breitbart at the time when it had the black crime tab, by the way. He left only because they became too anti-Semitic.
Through any podcast app. So then in 2020, Spotify was like, I want a piece of this, like, giant popular podcast. And they bought the exclusive rights to the podcast for $200 million.
Which is unbelievably insane.
This was a huge deal for Joe Rogan, but also for podcasts.
Let's go.
Even after this big deal, the show retained its unfiltered quality. It still was Joe Rogan sitting around, chatting with mostly dudes, talking openly and unfiltered for hours.
This is mind-boggling. This is like unironically journalistic malpractice. I think I put a lot of I think I placed Johnny Harris like many cuts above like the average YouTube essayist, because I think that his like research is pretty dedicated. And obviously, like, I know we have ideological differences on foreign policy and whatnot, but this is one aspect where I did not think Johnny Harris was going to basically lie by omission to dick ride Joseph Robinette Rogan this way.
You don't know what a bear is. I've seen a bear in the wild. When you see a bear in the wild, you're like, oh, you don't give a fuck about me.
Often getting progressively more high with his guest.
Do people get upset at you if you do certain things? There's tobacco and marijuana in there.
I'm getting text messages from friends saying, what the hell are you doing smoking weed?
Okay, so my job has apparently turned into getting super deep into watching stuff that I never watched before, like North Korean films, and now Joe Rogan podcasts. Like, I've dedicated a significant amount of my time over the past several months to watching this show. And even still, I'm just scratching the surface. These episodes are long. They're like 2.5 hours on average, and there are almost 2,000 of them. We're talking thousands and thousands of hours of this stuff. Luckily for this story, I had help from our story producer, Alex, to help us listen to a lot of this stuff. I also spoke with some longtime Joe Rogan.
Whatever, dog. I'm a One Piece fan, okay? Talk to me when you fucking become a One Piece enjoyer, okay? Get the fuck out of here.
And listeners for some insight. And here in the office, we actually had some pretty nice heated debates about Joe Rogan. And now, after my baptism by Joe Rogan, I now have some big takeaways, some things I want to say. Number one, Joe hates boxes.
And people love that he hates boxes.
He spends a lot of time lambasting our society's need to fit people into buckets, into labels.
I think this left, right paradigm is really kind of fucking foolish at this point.
Bro, are you kidding me? He's just like, he's basically saying that like Joe Rogan is a dumbass, but in a nice way. Like, let me reframe that real quick. Oh, he just hates boxes. What is this fucking liberal wine mom shit, dude? What are we doing here? Oh, he just hates labels. That's why he's like that. He's a Scorpio. Like, get the fuck out of here, Johnny Harris. What the hell is going on? I've never felt this way about a Johnny Harris video until this moment. It's a subject matter that I am the foremost authority and expert on. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's how you feel when you hear him talk about like fucking coups that he did not mention or whatever the fuck. I mean, I am by no means a subject matter expert on that, but this is something that I'm an absolute subject matter expert on. And it's deeply and insanely frustrating to see him cover it like this. Oh, he's just like, oh, he's just a, you know, he's just a guy who hates boxes. Like, that's not, it's how we get when you talk sports. Yeah, but I'm very deliberately telling you I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about with sports and don't care to know. That's the difference. I'm not presenting something on sports like I'm the fucking authority on it. I didn't make a 35-minute YouTube essay on sports. You know what I mean?
And indeed, it's fairly impossible to put Joe Rogan into the standard ideological boxes that we're all sort of pressured to fit into. Most of our media discourse loves boxes, loves to inflame our super identities, the things that—
Like, why is he positioning himself like he wasn't at fucking Vox News? Which is like the box creator, okay? They are the box store, okay? They make the fucking boxes. You made the boxes. It was like, oh man, the media, mainstream media is like, they love boxes, right? Not Joe Rogan, though. Free thinker, by the way. Get the fuck out of here. Oh my God.
that we must believe in order to be a good liberal or a good conservative.
What kind of opinions are okay to have because they don't interfere with anybody else's life, and it's just your philosophy and the way you look at the world, and you should be able to express that opinion and express those ideas in front of someone else who has an opposing idea, and they tell you why they disagree.
And so before I listened to 1 million hours of the show, I had mostly seen Joe Rogan in the context of like short little edited clips of like smackdowns showing like some egregious thing that Joe Rogan had said, that he was
Oh, he was duped. Joe Rogan is an enigma. Okay? A mystery trapped inside of a riddle. Joe Rogan contains multitudes. You don't get it. If you've seen Joe Rogan online, you've probably been clip chimped. Well, let me tell you, as someone who watched uninterrupted thousands of fucking hours of this dumb ape who I used to love and have admiration for, who I've met personally, let me tell you, okay? You're not being clip chimped, okay? What the fuck is this guy saying? Oh, dude, he contains multitudes. Like, when he's talking about ivermectin and throwing the kitchen sink, like, people are just clip chimping him. Except he did do that. Oh, when he's talking about, like, transphobia, he's just, like, he's actually just talking about, like, trans girls in sports. Like, that's a real big issue, dude. He cares about fairness in sports. It's like, dude, what are you saying? Do you think Johnny Harris just really wants to be invited on the podcast so we made a whole video glazing Joe Rogan? I don't know. I don't want to be like the cynical guy. I don't want to be the cynical guy who's like, oh, there's an alternative reason here as to why he's saying these things. Maybe he's just a dumbass. I don't know. We'll see.
Transphobic or fatphobic or misogynistic or racist. There's a lot of these mashups out there.
She's giant. Like, look at the size of her head, her formerly male head.
Yeah.
That's a giant woman.
We walk into we walked in, dude. We walked in the door and there.
He's saying Planet of the Apes in that, by the way. You know, contains multitudes, guys. Yeah. He's saying he walked into, I think it was a movie theater or something, and there was he said an area where there was only black people was like Planet of the Apes.
There was no white people. There was no white people.
Wow. That video is so bad it actually made me miss the N-word video.
And when you watch this stuff, it's so easy to just like slot him into like, oh, he must be like some far right sort of like racist reactionary commentator. So I was surprised, honestly, when I listened to a lot of this guy.
And to find out that he is actually like that, right? Bro, are you fucking stupid? Look. I've told you this before. I don't think Joe Rogan is like a psychotic anti-black racist. And people have shit on me for this, especially because I was talking about it literally in the confines of the N-word saga that he was going through again when people were canceling him for his earlier N-word takes. I don't think he is. And I'll stand by that. I've listened to the man for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, okay? I don't think he's like an anti-black racist. He is racist, though, and sometimes can be anti-black. He's not more anti-black racist than the average, like, out and about, you know, serious, centrist, apolitical Andy or whatever. He's from fucking Boston. I think he lived in New Jersey for an extended period of time. Of course, he's a white guy. All right? But overall, he's not like deliberately cutting secretly anti-black racist propaganda. Those older videos, he has apologized for. He knows that shit is bad. That's one thing. Okay? Having said that, however, to act like a lot of this stuff is clipped out of context and he contains multitudes, he offers so much more, is mind-boggling. Okay? Because with Joe Rogan, what you see is what you fucking get. Sure, he's a bit of a chameleon who changes ideologies on a whim in accordance to who he's talking to. But I believe the far better way of analyzing Joe Rogan is off of things, I will categorize this, things he cares about and will defend. Because Joe Rogan is malleable. He's always been that way. Unprincipled and malleable. And back in the day, there were a couple things he put in the I care about this box. Early Joe Rogan always would put smoking weed and even doing DMT in the I care about this box. That box inside of his mushy, soft brain was made by like this impenetrable armor, okay? He would defend it non-fucking stop. Doesn't matter. You could have an expert on. And convince this man that, like, the moon is fake, and he would probably believe it. But if you told him weed is bad, he'd be like, fuck you, that's not the case. Here is, like, why that is not the case. Fuck yourself. Okay? As a matter of fact, Joe Rogan used to believe that the moon landing was fake. I think he's changed his position on that, but it doesn't matter. So that box grew. Okay? Over time, that box grew. Doesn't mean his brain grew, but things got added into that box. Okay? Things got added in that box that he started fucking unironically defending. One of them was ivermectin or vaccine denial. Another one was cis girls playing with trans girls in sports. The was it Fallon Fox era? Like where he slowly started dipping his water in the anti-trans shit. Okay? And he dived into it, okay? He fucking dove in head first. And that was literally before the Christian right unironically found out that anti-trans issues only worked really well when it was paired up with sports and fairness in sports. Joe Rogan was ahead of the game. He was a genuine figure that genuinely believed that it was unjustifiable and completely ridiculous to allow trans women to compete with cis women. Okay? He was ahead of the curve. He was ahead of the right-wing Christian lobby. So remember that. That was the other thing that was in his box. Now that box is full of fucking right-wing bullshit. Okay? Completely. Just like cancel culture is so bad. Trans women in sports. Like back in the day, Joe Rogan was an infinitely more interesting figure because the show was interesting, because there was a multitude of different opinions. And since 2014, 2015, the show has slowly but surely became more and more and more right-wing. As people have come and gone, as the people that he used to have were like fun, interesting guys. Even the fun, interesting guys have become charlatan hawkers of pills and supplements instead of just being like a unique and interesting guy. People that sell you courses, cryptocurrency charlatans, people like that. Like he substituted the interesting guys for newer, shittier, late-stage capitalist versions of said shittier guys. He substituted the mushroom guys for guys that are selling you something different. You know what I mean? Like, it still seems like a mushroom guy. It sounds like a mushroom guy, but this guy is also selling you some other shit. It's not just cranks, it's conment cranks. Okay? But worst of all, he substituted the thinkers, okay, that were unique and interesting and comedians and whatnot with right-wing media people. Okay? So many right-wing media people have basically gained prominence off of the backs of the Joe Rogan Experience. Genuinely sad state of affairs. And for those of you who are asking, like, why did you stop watching? It's because, honestly, it got fucking boring. You guys know me. I'm not exactly the type of person that would stop watching content because it's offensive, okay? If anything, it made me look at it harder, all right? Because I certainly was fucking locked in, even during the alt-right Gamergate era of Joe Rogan. I was watching all those fucking content creators come on. I was angry. I was white-knuckling through it, but I was still watching because it was still interesting to a certain degree. Now it's just fucking boring. Now it's just an old man who's so out of touch, so rich, and he has created a circle of yes men. He rarely ever has interesting guests on. When he does, they're like barely ever talking about fucking aliens. Like, it doesn't seem like the heart of the show is there. Okay? Podcast was a great outlet for people who didn't have an older brother who smoked weed and told you about dumb shit. Okay, that's what the podcast was. Nowadays, the conspiracy guys are fucking like too insane to even appreciate because they're also trying to like they're so grimy. They're trying to sell you something, and you're like, come on, dude, just like be really invested in the conspiracy. That's all I care about. You know what I mean? Make content. Don't try to sell me something. Okay? Nowadays, everybody sees it as like an opportunity to sell something. They don't go on there to have an interesting discussion. They go on there to become famous, and they know how target rich of an environment Joe Rogan's audience is because they're all fucking apes themselves. I listened to Faithful until mid-2015. His guests got worse and worse. There were too many Callan Schaub episodes or too few oceanographers, etc. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Brian Callen and Brendan Schaub episodes were also fucking just awful. The other day, he actually had a physicist on. I looked him up and saw that he works for PragerU. That's what I mean. Like, there is no more. Every single person that Joe Rogan has on is like has like some level of fucking association with like a right-wing media outlet. Like, it's so bad. It's all of them, dude. Every single one. It sucks. I mean, guys, this guy had fucking Dave Rubin on multiple times. Get the fuck out of here. That's when you've lost the plot. Dave Rubin offers nothing. He offers nothing. He's not interesting. He's not unique. He's not funny. He's just a right-wing guy. That's it. Any right-wing guy. Okay? It just sucks. So when you ask me why I don't watch fucking Joe Rogan no more, that's the reason. Because his content fucking blows dicks, dude. That's why. I'd still watch if he was... I'd probably still watch Joe Rogan if he was being like insanely racist. If he somehow also managed to make it entertaining, okay? I'm white. The armor of privilege. Probably frustrate me, but I could still find some kind of content out of it. You know what I mean? Yeah, like Alex Jones. Point is, he's also not entertaining. It's a similar thing that happened with Sam Harris. Harris coddled anti-Islam because of target-rich environment. Right-wingers all go on Rogan because he's dumb and so are his listeners. Easy grift. Yeah. Joe Rogan can spend 1 hour saying we got to take care of the environment, regulate more, hold corporations accountable, blah, blah, blah. And on the next episode, he's like, nah, fuck all that woke shit. Ron DeSantis 2024. Yeah. Which is why if you are Vox.com's very own Johnny motherfucking Harris, how do you make a video like this and you make it seem like Joe Rogan contains multitudes when he's literally a chameleon? And even the dumbest Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy who's been choke slammed so fucking hard that his brain no longer works the same. He might have gotten a stroke from all of his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Even that guy fucking understands that Joe Rogan is a chameleon. So how the fuck did Johnny Harris not see it? This is how you get invited on. I mean, yeah, I will never be invited on the Joe Rogan Experience. Let's be fucking real. Doesn't matter if I'm the most famous person on the planet. That is the reality. Because I do not ride his dick. Johnny Harris, on the other hand, is kind of bouncing on it right now, doing tricks on it a little bit.
To find out that his politics actually lean mostly left.
She's the wife of the best president that we have had in our lifetime.
He openly and earnestly voices support for everything from universal health care to abortion to gay marriage to recreational drugs.
I lean way left when it comes to those kind of things, gay rights and things like...
Dog, he's literally a fucking Ron DeSantis supporter. Get the fuck out of here, Jesus.
Social programs for disenfranchised people and disenfranchised communities. I lean way left. Like, if I want my tax dollars to go to anything, I want it to go to making people's lives easier.
I'm not right-wing at all.
Oh, okay.
No,
that's wild.
No, there's nothing about me that's right-wing.
He even endorsed Bernie Sanders.
Wait. You know, just two left-wing guys talking, right, Johnny? Johnny, what do you think about Jimmy Dore, Johnny? What do you think about his Ukraine takes, for example? What do you think about Jimmy Dore? Think he's a left-wing guy, too? Come on. I mean, I know you want to go on Joe Rogan's show, but do you want to go on Jimmy Dore's show? Probably not. So you're probably going to be honest about his perspective, aren't you? Come on.
Here's the Democratic Socialist in 2020 after having him on the show.
There's not a single human that can speak for all the American people. But you could look out for the interests of the American people. And I think Bernie Sanders definitely does do that.
You got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of the American society. You don't see that on television too much, do you?
No, you don't.
3 people. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 92%.
What are the misconceptions of you? Because here's the, if you go to...
Point to a fucking post-COVID clip of Joe Rogan being a fucking leftist, openly saying he's a leftist. I'm going to lose my fucking mind, okay? The closest you get to is when he's talking to that fucking freak Seth Dillon, okay? The Babylon Bee guy. And Seth Dillon is trying to fucking argue that it's okay to force a 13-year-old who's been raped to carry a pregnancy to term. And Joe Rogan sees red. That is the only time I've seen in the fucking post-COVID universe where Joe Rogan was like, hold up, this is insane. No, you can't do that. You can't do that to my daughter. That's what he says. Also, doesn't matter if he says he's a leftist. Right-wingers love to say they're leftists when they're not. Tim Pool, the leftist. Exactly. This is starting to piss me the fuck off, dude. It's starting to piss me off. Oh, my God. Listen, man. Joe Rogan is not that complex, okay? It's not. He's just like the average American voter in many ways. Really fucking far right on some issues, really fucking far left on others, maybe, depending on who you ask or how they're feeling in that moment. But if there's one thing that Joe Rogan is not, that is a person who has thought things through, okay? He's just like the classic fucking American voter who's like, oh, I voted for a Republican. Now I'm voting for a fucking Democrat. Oh, I don't know. That's who he is. And as someone who claims to have watched thousands of hours of fucking Joe Rogan, I would have expected this dude to at least done a better job of describing that instead of being like, he is so complex of a figurehead. This is literally just signaling to the YouTube audience that you're doing PR for Joe Rogan because you want to go on his fucking show and you want to eat away at some of his market share. You want some of his fans to watch your fucking videos. That's it, man. It's so disingenuous. It is so cowardly to do this. It is so fucking cowardly to do this. You can make an honest assessment. I've defended Joe Rogan time and time again on issues where people have taken it too fucking far. Okay? But this is ridiculous. Trying to audition to be on the fucking Joe Rogan Experience by making this fucking big-ass YouTube video and like simultaneously getting a lot of views on it because Joe Rogan has a lot of fans, obviously, is so cowardly. I really hope that this changes a little bit, this video. Like, there's no way this is just a suck show, right?
Go to the knee-jerk conservative reaction. You talk to people who are not interested in anyone that wants to be a democratic socialist. They hear the name Bernie Sanders. The negative implications are that you are somehow or another going to take their money, right? Is that annoying to you?
Yes, it is. Of course it is.
Oh, and here he is with presidential hopeful Andrew Yang.
Another beacon of left-wing ideas, man. Oh! I'm so mad. I'm fucking losing my mind. I hate Americans. I hate how fucking stupid they are about politics. Andrew Yang was never a leftist, okay? From the jump. I don't give a fuck what YouTube personality told you, what YouTube essayist, debater, commentator that told you that Andrew Yang was a fucking left-wing guy. He never was a left-wing guy. UBI is not a leftist concept. If UBI was a leftist concept, then Milton fucking Friedman would be considered a leftist. Fuck! I said this literally in like whenever the fuck Andrew Yang popped out, okay? Whatever year, the first time. I said, listen, you got to be careful, okay? UBI, if seen as a substitute, there are old videos, you can find them in like 2018, 2016, 2017, whenever the fuck Andrew Yang gained prominence. UBI is great as long as it is not a substitute for the social safety nets that exist. Andrew Yang absolutely presented it as such. I like Yang until I saw you talk about him like 4 years ago. And people would come in here and try to fucking advocate for Yang Gang. Non-stop. Just wait till the end. You're going to blow one. I am already blowing one. I've already fucking blown a gasket, dude. I'm getting a fucking aneurysm. Oh, he had Andrew Yang on. Such a leftist.
Him on the super progressive idea of universal basic income.
My initial knee-jerk reaction was, get the out of here. Like, universal basic income, just going to give people money, they're just going to be lazy, nothing's ever going to get done. That's a terrible idea. And then I started paying attention to the rise of AI and automation and how many jobs are going to get taken away from. And then once you see the actual numbers, it's pretty staggering.
But despite thinking that, he presents his ideas in this very kind of anti-woke, anti-political correctness, say whatever you want type of vibe. And this is confusing, but also very appealing. People love to listen to a guy whose views and language are all over the place. I think for a lot of people, it's like a respite from the predictable lineup of popular voices that tow a predictable list of beliefs, opinions, views, and enemies. Rogan's style is rare, and I think people like that. Which gets me to my second big takeaway.
Bitch, I'm anti-woke. Get the fuck out of here, dude. That is not... Dude, there's a difference between, like, not caring about the aesthetic subtext or the aesthetic liberalism and hand waving that away, and even sometimes going so far as to shit on the people that come in here to do rad lib bullshit, like, oh my god, I can't believe you didn't issue a trigger warning here, blah blah blah. Like, I've talked about the narcissism of radical liberalism so many fucking times, okay? So many times. That is a stylistic choice that can be a part of your personality, a part of your ideology, okay? Joe Rogan goes way beyond that. The idea that he is like this super progressive guy is insane. I yell at trans people from time to time in here when they're fucking chirping about some dumb shit, okay? I have trans chatters that I yell at, okay? That doesn't mean I'm fucking transphobic. There's a difference between doing that and telling, for example, trans people to not be cringe posting in the chat versus being transphobic. That's the difference. There's a difference between the two. Like, oh, he doesn't care about political correctness. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Joe Rogan sells contrarianism. That is his product. A quick reminder that Joe Rogan isn't just a guy. He is a commercial icon, a seasoned performer who performs for an audience for money. He knows what people want, and he is selling something very popular. An alternative to the endless, reductionist, polarized name-calling of our current discourse.
They all do the same move. They drop down and do the splits.
That's what I think when I'm watching your shows too, you know?
But he is more corrected to the masses than you, dude. I think the video is meaning that he reaches all the subgroups of society rather than you highly reaching libs when the main audience is leftist. Wait, what? That's crazy to me, man. Johnny comments on his video saying he hopes he goes on JRE. Look, everybody wants to go on the Joe Rogan Experience. I would love to go on the Joe Rogan Experience. The difference between me and other people is that I'm not going to fucking bounce on Joe's dick to be able to have that opportunity. That's the main difference. Do you get it? And a lot of people know full well that Joe will not have you on if you shit on him. That's it. But Johnny Harris, on the other hand, is blowing bubbles. He's blowing bubbles on it. He's doing tricks on it. I feel like Joe Rogan has fallen off. I think there's still a part of me that is a young Joe Rogan fan that will always say, like, it doesn't matter how little his audience is. I would love to still go on the JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, though. I'm not going to fucking, like, lie or omit the truth and act like Joe Rogan is something he's not. It's just so ridiculous.
All the same stuff.
But
and he goes to great lengths to stake himself out as this anti-authority, anti-establishment platform where anyone can come and talk.
If you're in one camp, you're supposed to have all the opinions that one camp has.
Yeah.
And if you do not align with all the opinions that one camp has, you find yourself cast out of the group.
No woke police, no mainstream media bias, no corporate deception, just an earnest, curious guy trying to find the truth and not really worrying too much.
Yeah, anyone but Sam Cedar, you know what I mean? Anyone but Sam Cedar. Like, no, man, no. If you've ever fucking criticized Joe Rogan extensively, you're not going on it, okay? Look at Kyle Kalinske. Love Kyle. You won't see Kyle fucking doing anti-Joe Rogan commentary ever. Why? Because Kyle's on the Joe Rogan Experience. David Pakman, I don't even think David does that. Or if he has, I don't know if he's going on the Joe Rogan Experience anytime soon. You know what I mean? That's just the reality. Like, it's just, he's not going to have people on that shit on him, okay? Kyle will go on and push back every now and then, but he rarely will have people on that, oh, David does and is no longer invited? Yeah, there you go. If you I know Dave Pakman's been on, and it's actually really valuable. It's really valuable to go on Joe Rogan Experience if you're a leftist, okay? It is. But he has no time for anybody that has ever criticized him. Adam Conover pushed back. Yeah, remember when Adam Conover pushed back and then he was always invited ever again? And also when Adam Conover was on, he was on a fucking TV show and he had never talked about Joe Rogan beforehand, I don't think. What are you talking about? I'm talking about people that have already cut commentary on Joe's behavior.
About changing his language to fit the politically correct sensitivities of the day.
What I didn't anticipate was social media and the echo chambers that it would provide.
Right.
And that these ideological echo chambers also come with virtue signaling, and that people get on these things because you're only dealing with a short amount of characters, and you state something that you know is going to get a bunch of likes, and people are very addicted to likes.
The fans I talk to love this about Joe Rogan. Like, he's like the antidote to like the corporate mainstream biased media that's polarizing us all. And frankly, I think he leans into this as his brand. Which gets me to my third point, and this is where I have my biggest critique of Joe Rogan. Joe lets people talk.
That's your biggest critique of Joe Rogan? After you said he sells contrarianism? This is neatly repackaging. One is neatly repackaging that Joe Rogan is a fucking dumb ape, and people love that, because that is true. Joe Rogan himself admits that, okay? Just like I admit I'm a fucking dumbass, okay? Straight up. Joe Rogan is a dumb ape. He doesn't hate boxes. He just doesn't understand it. Okay? He's not engaging in like hyper intellectual conversations that go beyond the neatly confined ideological boxes that we have in neoliberal monoculture. Okay? Number two, Joe sells contrarianism is just reactionary politics. Joe sells reactionary politics. When you're a dumb ape, you, of course, respond like a dumb ape to new things that are happening around you that you cannot understand. You have two options when you're a fucking dumb ape. I'm a dumb ape, too, so I know this, okay? I'm a dumb ape. So when I see something that I don't fucking fully understand, my immediate reaction isn't like, fuck that. No, stay there. Not happening. My immediate reaction is either, I don't care enough about this. Who gives a fuck? Move on. Or let me understand. Let me try to see what is going on in the world that I am now privy to. Okay? What's happening? Why are these people saying these things? Is there any truth to what's going on here? Joe doesn't do that. He's like, that's different. That's change. Me no like change. That is reactionary. Okay? He's not selling contrarianism. He's selling reactionary politics, reacting to stimuli, reacting to progress happening all around him, refusing to identify with it, refusing to understand it, and saying, change bad, change bad, change bad. Number 3, Joe lets people talk. That's my main criticism. If anything, that's the only good thing that he does, but it's a bad thing because he's a reactionary and only has reactionary guests. There was an element of curiosity back in the day and allowing people to talk that made the Joe Rogan experience good. But when the guests and the style of guests changed, all of a sudden the nature of the content changed. Okay? I love the idea of being contrarian when you're literally selling mainstream American conservative reactionary politics. What the fuck is reactionary? What the fuck is contrarian about Joe Rogan when he's like half the time saying shit that you would either hear on MSNBC or more than half the time saying shit that you hear on Fox News on a daily basis? Woke culture sucks. These youth are too gay. They're too liberal. They're too woke. They're too soft. What about that is contrarian? Yeah, Joe has also gotten mad at Jamie for proving him/his guests wrong, pushing misinformation. Jamie rarely pulls shit up anymore. And he used to. He used to at least be like the final barrier, like the Cheeto holding the door as the SWAT team is ready to break it. That was Jamie pulling shit up on his computer. Now that's kind of gone too.